What's up, sons? It's Blind Red with Son of a Tech once again, and everybody has been asking me about what I think surrounding the Quai network. Now, a few days ago, Voskcoin released a video called Brand New GPU Mineable Coin, the Quai network. Basically, Voskcoin within the first few minutes covered everything you need to know about this particular project, and all of its red flags are out there in the open, however, not explicitly stated. So let's go ahead and look at these red flags that were presented in the Voskcoin video, and I'll let you guys determine whether or not you think this project is something you want to move forward with when mining with your GPUs. Let's get into it. Welcome back, everyone. So this is going to be basically a sort of reaction video to this Voskcoin video, which I'll leave a link to in the description below. I think Vos did a very good job at actually covering this particular project. However, it wasn't explicitly stated what I would consider are to be some negative things surrounding this project. So let's watch the video and call them out. Hopefully what you'll find here is a way in which you can start basically analyzing the videos of various cryptocurrency content creators to really get to the bottom of what's going on. The great Voskcoin logo here. Let's go ahead and get into it.
Quai network, rebuilding currency, a new financial system, EVM, Ethereum virtual machine, basically think Ethereum fork, compatible blockchains.
Now, when he says fork, you already know that a fork is going on. It's not a direct Ethereum fork. Once I went ahead and dug into the GitHub along with basically all of the GitHub contributors here that you can see, I've been digging into it. Frankly, what I did find is the miner is actually coming from a fork of a miner for something called Ether Core. And basically, I think that there are relations between these two projects. The other thing that I noticed on the main GitHub for the Go Quai is that on the consensus mechanism side of things, or the build here, you can see that they switched from Blake 3 hashing algorithm to ProgPow. Now it says switch to Blake 3 from ProgPow, but if we click into it and take a look at it, you can see what they're doing here is they're removing the line for Blake 3 proof of work and adding the line for ProgPow. So even though it's named incorrect, if you dig into it, you can see where they added the lines, what they're adding, and so on. So that's a way that you can analyze that. Let's go ahead and go back to the video.
That they're boasting can achieve more than 50,000 TPS, that's transactions per second, without compromise.
Now, if that is going to be true, obviously 50,000 transactions per second is going to be fantastic. Unfortunately, Vosk in this particular coin compared it to Ethereum and some slower chains. If we really wanted to compare it to chains that are functioning right now that are very fast, Solana, which is a proof of stake coin, would be one that we could look at with maximum transactions per second of 47,000. We have Nexa going up to 100,000 transactions per second in the future. Of course, that's not right now. And of course, Caspa, once we get to Rust, is going to be somewhere between 6,400 and 20,000 transactions per second. Of course, with Caspa in particular, they're very focused on blocks per second versus transactions per second. And if you're curious about that, I'll leave the link to the reasoning for it down in the description below. Let's hop back in.
Compromising their decentralization. To put this into perspective, it's that much faster than Bitcoin, that much faster than Ethereum. Quai utilizes merge mining of networks. They have a unique...
So now the merge mining thing is not exactly clear at this point. I don't see merge mining as a part of the testnet in particular, but because it is using ProgPow, the idea here, I think at the end of the day, is going to be able to merge mine essentially the Quai network along with another ProgPow coin like Raven coin, for example, etc.
Algorithm called proof of entropy minima. More poetically, poem. They utilize the ProgPow mining algorithm for the mining side of things, which I'll talk more about later. But let's
which
talk
we already
about
called out.
The Iron Age testnet, which just began. This is the third of their 5 planned testnets. Quai Network has adjusted their testnet time frame.
Now, a big important note here is when they're bragging about the high transactions per second in the initial, it's just like Nexa and the fact that it's not really there yet. Same as Caspa, it's not really there yet. But what you can see here is that in the phase one, the transactions per second limit will be set to 450, which is still very fast for a proof of work coin.
It will likely run for 3 months. It's based on blocks in the actual chain as opposed to an arbitrary date. The chain should move at a relatively expected pace, which again means that we have about 3 months of runway to participate in this incentivized Quai network testnet. They're distributing 12 million Quai tokens, 8 million to miners, and 4 million to developers.
Now, of course, this is a big note, the first red flag of the day. Voskcoin covered it, of course, kind of briefly going over it here at the very beginning of the video, but this is one of the most important things to pay attention to. There will be essentially an incentivized set of test networks similar to what we saw with Ironfish. And yes, here in just a second, you'll find out that that will require KYC for you to get your airdrops after the mainnet goes live and they drop it. And the initial Genesis block here appears to have about 2/3 of the block going to miners and a whopping third of that Genesis block going to the developers. Now, it's not completely clear that these developers are the developers on the team itself for the Quai network, as it does say it's for developers who deploy smart contracts and dApps onto the Iron Age testnet, meaning that there is probably basically some chance for you as a developer to go on there and earn some of those. I would highly recommend going through their documentation if you're interested in that particular piece, because then you're not having to waste power. You just have to waste brain power. There we go. And you can potentially, I guess, get a piece of that reward. I would like to see a more detailed split up of what this is, because Genesis blocks with a payout to developers right off the snap is typically pretty bad, in my humble opinion. But this is a new trend as well, going from Ironfish to the Quai network. That's very interesting, where you do have a developer fund in the Genesis block and you have these incentivized test nets for miners that are looking to speculative mine, because that's what it is. There is no price for this particular currency right off the bat, but you're kind of getting this in early feel. It didn't work out great for Ironfish. The profitability, if you ran through what you got paid out from the testnet, is very bad, right? The price of Ironfish on the launch wasn't good, but that's part of speculative mining. You may have speculatively mined Caspa and hit it big with that, but then you moved on to Ironfish and you kind of had a dud there, and it all starts to even out. That's kind of the risk to reward of speculative mining, and you're not always going to pick out the perfect ones. It's really interesting to build up hype surrounding these projects, that they are starting to do these kind of incentivized test nets with incentivizing miners in some form or fashion. I still would prefer in general that you have a full fair launch with no pre-mine and no developer fund and no large Genesis block. That's just me. I'd like to hear your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below.
To miners and 4 million to developers. There's also a lot of testnet tooling. They have a dedicated wallet, which they forked from Tahoe Ethereum wallet, if you're familiar with that. There's a faucet. There's a block explorer. There's Quais, which is a version of Ethers, allowing developers to create applications that interact with their blockchains in a familiar environment. A CLI, or command line interface, hardware tool, node stats page, node setup tutorial.
Usually we say CLI just for the nomenclature on the hardware tool there. It just means a command line interface. Saying CLI is not, I get it. It's like Quai, it rhymes, but CLI is a proper term there.
And a Stratum proxy setup tutorial, as well as an ecosystem page. They have tutorials on how to do everything on their YouTube, as well as their documentation site. We'll look at their docs here shortly. As a heads up, you do have to complete KYC in order.
Second red flag in the video, you do have to complete KYC for the incentivized testnet payouts on the Genesis block. So keep that in mind. KYC is a big deal, especially surrounding cryptocurrency, and it is to bypass regulations within the United States, or I guess be sufficient for that in the US due to the way airdrops work, etc., and their regulatory status. But that does mean you are already KYCing yourself with this project right off of the bat. Typically goes against the principles surrounding cryptocurrency in general to KYC yourself, especially as a miner, which is what it's doing. It's basically getting all the miners that mine this project and getting their personal and private info into the system. And I'm definitely against that. I was against it with Ironfish, even though we showed you guys how to participate in it and all that sort of stuff. But that is the second red flag. Voss called it out. He let you know right off the bat. So good job there.
Sure. To redeem these tokens from this on-chain activity. And I also genuinely appreciate the Quai network. They've supported the Voskcoin YouTube channel in our content creation. But I really
And then, of course, the third large red flag there that is stated really quickly and briefly. If you skipped over it, I wouldn't blame you. A lot of people were like, well, I think this video is paid for. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It's definitely paid for. So the Quai network has paid Voskcoin to make this particular video. And that means that from the perspective of Vosk, he will probably be more inclined to be positive towards the network as opposed to negative. He did a very good job considering all that, calling out the red flags, of course, not explicitly here in this particular case, but he did do a good job at least covering it in the beginning of the video so that you are aware of it. And that is really the point of this video, is to show you guys that if you watch the entire content here, you will be able to tell if it's paid for. Now, one thing is there is a setting within YouTube where you can mark a video as paid content. I would suggest that Voss does that, because what it will do is it will pop up like a little notification up here, a little notification in the window saying this video was paid for, or this is a sponsored video. And because, you know, that coin in particular does sponsor Voskcoin, that should be marked within this video. So hopefully in the near future that will be done. Of course, that is required by YouTube to basically protect consumers or end users at the end of the day. So make sure that if you are making crypto content and it is paid for, that you do mark it. But Voskcoin did put that disclaimer in here. So good job as far as that goes. So red flags kind of all over this all over the place with this particular coin. You know, they are using obfuscated marketing terms like POEM for their consensus mechanism changes that they've made. But as you can see, most of the switches for the consensus mechanism, at least at this point, are pretty basic find and replace terms. You know, find Blake 3 POW, replace with Prog POW. For the most part, that's what's going on in the actual GitHub. As far as that's concerned, I'd have to look at the rest of it. I am digging through it. If you'd like a bigger kind of deep dive into what's going on the GitHub and all of that, let me know in the comment section below. Now, as far as the tokenomics go, if you go to their white page, or I guess their wiki here at docs.quai.network, the tokenomics aren't fully stated. So while we do know that there will be 8 million given to essentially miners and 4 million to developers of smart contracts and dApps, there could still be additional coin or tokens that are given out to maybe the direct people. And then the other thing that he didn't cover that I thought was extremely important is they do have 3 VC founders. They have Polychain Capital, which doesn't have the greatest track record, Alumni Ventures, as well as 01 Capital. So this is a very VC backed project. That was not a red flag that was called out. So I wanted to make sure that was covered as well. It's a VC backed pre-mined coin, for lack of a better term, because you do have a incentivized testnet with a large Genesis block, which essentially is a pre-mine, for lack of a better term there. It essentially functions in the same manner. Of course, you do have, I suppose, to a certain extent, any miner can participate. So from the mining side of things, you do have sort of that that open ability to mine it if you want as any individual, which is a little bit better than what we've seen in the past with other pre-mines. And that is pretty much wraps up my thoughts and opinions on the Quai network. A very good job on Vosk on covering it, even though it was paid for, which is a pretty big red flag in my humble opinion. Some of the things that are interesting, of course, is going to be the merge mining capability with PrimeXBT coins. We'll have to see how that gets implemented. Of course, I think tracking it within the GitHub will be great. I'll leave a link to the GitHub down in the comment section below. You can go over there. You can see, that they did go ahead and use things like the miner for ETH Core. If you want to check that out, I can show you guys if we're on the Dominant Strategies GitHub here. The Quai GPU miner is basically a fork of that particular, the ETH Core miner here. See, so that's how you can tell it's a fork and all of that. They did extend the PrimeXBT epoch and period for the Iron Age testnet, so they changed some things there that needed to be done from the fork to make sure it works with the Iron Age testnet, that sort of thing. Let me know if you like this style of video. I think that it's very difficult to navigate the cryptocurrency space, and this isn't an attack on different cryptocurrency content creators. It's a clarification of it. You have to realize that a lot of content creators out there are paid. Now, as I have stated on this channel, I don't take coin sponsorships, token sponsorships, anything like that, because I want to avoid it. And I want to be able to give you guys the explicit statements of red flags with any project that comes out, like I'm able to do with the Quai network, because I do not have a partnership with them, nor would I ever accept one with them, because it's my job to cover them as essentially unbiased as possible. And the only way you can do that is by not basically being paid by the projects. Now, I have other ways of monetization. I use locals at sonofatech.locals.com, where you can become a supporter for $5 a month or a discount at $50 a year. If you'd like to go over there, you can get a free month of supporter status on locals as well if you check out and purchase my crypto mining e-course at sonofatech.com. And also, I have new shirts and everything right down below the video. If you have ad blocker turned off, you can go to my Teespring at shop.sonofatech.com. If you do have the ad blocker turned on, purchase a t-shirt. I get a cut of that purchase. Of course, that's the way Teespring functions. We have a new one called Kilowatt Killers out. I think it looks really, really cool. It's basically a death metal logo, and it just says Kilowatt Killers because, that's what we do over here. We kill kilowatts and we mine cryptocurrency. I will see you next Tuesday.